So tonight we're going to talk about hiking Hadrian's Wall Path, beautiful path in England, one of many beautiful paths. We'll talk about what it is, where it is. We'll talk about hike planning in enough detail that I think you can get going. And we'll just take a look at what it's like to hike the Wall Path. It's a World Heritage Site, runs across northern England. I'll show you a map here in a second. It not only includes the Wall Path and the immediate area north and south of it, but also some other Roman ruins that you find along the way that we'll talk about. But most of the time, you're out in the wild, open North England country. Very beautiful. So let's take a look at a map. Here's London down here. Hadrian's Wall runs up here in the north part of England from about 73 miles. Here's the Scottish border. It's about 280 miles north of London. So it starts in the Newcastle area, actually a little town called Wallsend. Goes west to Bowness-on-Solway, which is right here, and near kind of a major town of Carlisle. The wall was built in the early hundreds by the Romans after they had conquered England. They moved north and finally encountered some nasty Scot tribes that weren't about to let them go any further. So they're expending a lot of energy and resources fighting these Scottish people. And I think they finally just gave up and said, let's just put a wall here and call this the northern border of the Roman Empire for now. So, one of the purposes, of course, was just to put a wall between them and the Scots, and kind of controlled a lot of cross-border crime that was always going on, but also enhanced trade and controlled immigration and stuff north to south or south to north. So we really don't know. It was probably, the purpose was probably all of those. Abandoned about 300 years later when the Romans left England, and the wall quickly deteriorated. 73 miles of nice stone was a real attraction to a lot of people that want to build farmhouses and churches and everything else. And so they went after those stones in a hurry. John Clayton in the 1800s wanted to save the wall, and he went through and did this. He built some stone on top of the old foundation just to try to restore the wall. And he's really the one that brought attention back to this as an historic site. And that kind of began the interest in England of trying to do something about it. Well, eventually they did, made it a World Heritage Site, and then completed the wall path in 2003. So the wall would look like this, be finished stone on the outside, the two outsides, and then just fill of dirt and cobblestone, that sort of stuff in the middle. 20 feet high, 10 feet thick. And then on the north side, on the Scotch side, was a deep ditch to try to keep invaders at bay. And then a lot of post holes here, which were just holes with spikes sticking up, making it even more difficult to attack the wall. On the English side, there was a road that ran all along the wall called the Military Way. This was all sort of a military zone here. They had a couple mounds here that were probably formed when they dug this, which is the vallum. And this is another ditch on the English side, on the friendly side. And so this was probably done to keep people from coming into the military area, undesirables of some sort, and probably also meant to keep deserters from running away. You know, when the Romans came in to your country, they just all of a sudden declared you a Roman citizen and stuck you in the army. So there was probably undesirable traffic going both ways, and the vallum was there to try to control that. On the top here is a picture of a ditch on the Scottish side, probably deeper and more sharply banked, 1,500 years ago than it is now. And then on the right here is a vallum on the English side. So that's a pretty wide ditch too. Huh? Every mile they built what was called a mile castle, and that held 32 men. Sometimes there was a gate that went through to the other side. Sometimes there wasn't. And then, and here's ruins of a mile castle. This is about as good a mile castle ruins as you see. That's about all that's left. And then in between the mile castles was a turret that held 10 men. There was a foundation of a turret along the wall. So it was well manned, that's for sure. Sometimes mile castles were expanded into entire forts. This is housesteads. We'll see some more pictures of this later. But this is a nice Roman ruin to visit up there, and people can drive up to this without having to hike along the wall to see it. And we'll talk a little more about maybe seeing that in some kind of day trip if you go over for that. And there are other forts sometimes constructed close by to the wall. We ran into other things. This was an altar of some sort along the way. And then this was a gate. You can see the beginnings of the arch. And that wasn't a mile castle there, but they had constructed a gate there. So let's take a look at the trail just a little bit. It's pretty flat at the beginning and at the end. And I'm going to always talk about the beginning being east and the end being west. That's the way we went. That's the way most guidebooks go. And then the middle, pretty hilly. So you can see by the elevation here that in the middle, you've got some ups and downs. It takes you all day before you finally see a wall on the first day. Christy and I were excited when we finally found what we were looking for and said, oh, okay, this is what we're going to be marching along.
A tiny piece we finally found.
That's right. And there's no wall on the last day. And I'll talk more about that last day hike in a minute or later on. Most of the hike is through farm fields and small villages, like I said. 2 large towns, Newcastle here in the east and Carlisle here in the west. The rest of it is just small little villages that you go through if you go through the village at all. So let's take a look at some trip planning. The one thing you have to think about is which way you're going. You're going east to west or west to east. How are you going to get there and how are you going to get back? Are you going to stay in B&Bs or are you going to camp? Are you going to carry all your stuff in a backpack or are you going to use a baggage service? Both are available. I'll talk a little bit more about that. You're going to plan your hike yourself, plan your trip yourself, make your own reservations, or are you going to pay a service to do it all for you? How do you know where the trail is? How do you navigate? What do you bring? What do you not bring? What do you wear? What about that famous North England weather? How about some side trips along the way? And then we'll talk a little bit about options to hiking the whole thing, where you can see a lot of it and have a good time without having to hike the whole thing. And then I'll give a kind of a roundup of what our costs were. So the book says, all the books go east to west. And it's easy to get to Newcastle from London. You know, it's pretty close and you don't have to change a bunch of trains. And that makes it very convenient. I think the book talks about going from city to country. I'm not sure what that means, but it's nice to start off in a big city where you can get all of your stuff and get your legs and all that. West to east, the book talks about the winds at your back. Well, if you're worried about the wind, you're going at the wrong time of year, huh, Christy? So you don't want to go when there's a lot of wind. We had nice weather. We went in late May, early June, and so we weren't worried about wind one way or another. But we did meet some people going the other way. And of course, then you're a little closer to London to get back rather than all the way over here. But my recommendation would be go east-west. Transportation was pretty easy. We made all of our train reservations ahead of time using trainline.com, which is an English transportation site. That included everything, subway tickets, the whole bit. And so it was really nice just to be able to stick a card in the kiosk and get all your tickets and everything you needed. Coming back, since it was quite a ways to come back from the west side, we didn't get there in time to catch a plane, but we were able to stay in the airport pretty cheaply in one of those mini hotel rooms where you got about 10 square feet. So that's us flying over. This is King's Cross train station. We went from Gatwick to King's Cross and caught the train to Newcastle from there. There is, in fact, at King's Cross, a track 9 3/4 for the Hogwarts Express. So that was interesting. And we saw a bunch of tourists taking a look at that. Next, should we stay in a B&B or a camp? Well, obviously B&Bs are more expensive, but there's good food. Of course, you might be able to get good food when camping too. Comfort, shower. Camping's cheaper. I didn't find campsites as convenient along the way as B&Bs. And there were some days where you had to hike quite a bit, that kind of thing, if we were going to do camping. And you never know about the weather. I'll talk a little bit more about the weather later. What did we do? Well, we planned on doing a little bit of both. And in the infamous Albatross Hostel in Newcastle, before we started out, we reopened the book, madly changed our minds, madly called the other B&Bs that we hadn't already booked, and changed our whole trip to B&Bs. And boy, are we glad we did that.
So glad, so glad.
So these numbers here show each night where we stayed. And here you can see about the number of miles in between. And, you know, lots of times when you're hiking a trail or something like that, you're doing a lot more than 8-10 miles, but you're not in any hurry. You know, you're there to see the countryside, you're there to see the wall. And so, and you're there to enjoy an evening meal and that sort of stuff and a nice breakfast in the morning. So we found this mileage to be just right for what we wanted to do.
They were pretty reasonably priced too, and we got tea at the end of every day, and
that's right.
Could do our laundry. Once we started doing them, we couldn't stop.
That's right. So I think B&B only may be the way to go. Carry your backpack versus a baggage service. Well, we had a complete backpack when we started out, tents and sleeping bags and all that stuff. And we got, we got a little ways. We got to Carroll B&B, and we were sitting there waiting for the woman to come home. She'd gone off to take her kids somewhere. And a baggage service showed up. And we said, hey, can you take our stuff, our sleeping bag, tents, and all the stuff we thought we'd need to cook outside and all that stuff. Can you take all that and take it to the last stop? Sure, he said. So we gave him a little money. We repacked all our stuff so we had a lighter pack. And he carried that stuff to the end. So we didn't have to carry it the whole way. We just picked it up and we got to the end.
It was amazing because also no one else was carrying a full backpack, we realized. We started to feel pretty stupid because we realized everyone's doing the B&Bs and no one's carrying a full backpack, and they're cruising and we're sweating in the sun with these heavy packs for no reason.
Yeah, and a lot of people were just having little day packs, because all they needed was stuff for the day and they'd meet their pack at the next stop. So the baggage service, about $12 a day, you tell them where to take your bag each night. They pick it up in the morning. You put it out front, they pick it up, they deliver it to your next stop. And then all you got to do is carry a light pack with some water and some lunch or something like that. We saw, excuse me, some people's baggage, they didn't even think of a backpack. They had a suitcase. And they just went by suitcase. So I think a baggage service might be a good idea. Like I say, $12 a day, if you know you're going to be staying in B&Bs, you can travel a lot lighter. And once we lightened up, it wasn't too bad. But it's your choice. You can go either way. You can also hire a service for $25 a night. Or, yeah, 7 nights, $25 a night. And they'll plan your whole trip for you. You tell them about how far you want to go. And they'll make, excuse me, all your reservations and everything for you. If we'd have done that, we'd have been in trouble because the night before we took off, we changed our mind about stuff. So it was a lot easier and more flexible for us to be able to do it that way. And lots of times I could communicate directly with the venue if we had questions. Like there was one place where we had to get a taxi and about 3 or 4 miles to their B&B, which was Downton Abbey. I'll show you a picture of it. It was well worth it. So we kind of like planning ourselves. Like I say, we went in early June. We started making reservations in December before Christmas, and I got most of them done by middle of January or so. The book has everybody's email address for all the B&Bs and all that stuff. Some of them I paid for ahead of time, some of them I didn't. So, but it's up to you. You can have somebody plan the trip for you. Navigation along the way, it's not normally too hard to see where the path is, but you can follow the acorns, follow the signs. Once in a while you see a real sign. We use the guidebook, which is just excellent. It's got all kinds of detail in here about the B&Bs and what you see. Look how detailed that map is there, showing us exactly where everything is. Little waypoints along the way. You'll see a fence here. You'll see this there. Here's a good restaurant here, that kind of thing. So the book was really good.
We got lost a few times, but the landmarks helped.
Yeah. Now they have a gut hook app for Hadrian's Wall path now, and I took a look at some samples of that, and it's got pretty much everything the book does. So all you got to do, you got to hook to a satellite to use gut hook, and you got to pay. I'm not sure how much the gut hook app is for Hadrian's Wall. We did use our phone GPS or GPS just for mileage. Sometimes when you're out in the middle of nowhere, you wonder, well, how far have we gone? How much longer do we have to go? It looks like it might rain, blah, blah, blah. So it was always good just to have GPS tracking the way so we knew we'd gone 5 miles or 6 miles and how much time we had left. What to bring and where? Well, this is on the wall of a B&B called Twice Brewed. There's a rock there. It's a weather forecasting stone. So you can read through how to use that weather forecasting stone. We kind of like that sign. There's little opportunity along the way to replenish water. You don't need a bunch. If we're only going 10, 11 miles, we don't need a lot. We carry enough. But you need to make sure you carry enough water that you're sure you've got it for the day, because like I say, there's not many places to replenish. A couple of days of clothes, wet weather gear all the time. Remember to pack light. You're not on the Appalachian Trail. You're not backpacking, especially if you're going to B&Bs every night. So you can travel pretty light. Weather's impossible to predict. When we went, everybody said they'd never seen a summer like this. They thought it rained all the time. There's one of the most beautiful summers they ever had, blah, blah, blah. There were just a couple times where it kind of started to rain a little bit. By the time we got our ponchos on, it stopped raining. But I think you need to be ready for anything, and you should be ready for some foul weather, even if we didn't experience any. There's a couple good side trips I'd suggest. Now, here's Newcastle where we started out, and we got to here. We decided to hike off the trail and go to Corbridge, which is a town on the river, and there's a Roman fort right there, so old Roman ruins. So this map shows a complete loop you can go around, but there's really nothing to see here, and we really wanted to get back on. So we hiked down to Corbridge and spent the night, and then we walked to the Roman fort. Wasn't that far, and visited that. Came back, and then the next morning we got a cab lift back up to the. We were going to hike back. We said, we already seen it, so we got a ride back up to the trail and continued on from there. So that was a nice break and a nice stop. The other one you might want to consider, I haven't gotten that far to tell you about this yet, but here at Once Brewed is a great youth hostel that we stayed at. Really nice, modern, great laundry, great food, everything else. And it's right next to Vindolanda, which is some Roman ruins, and also housesteads. Remember that I showed you housesteads? So you can stay at Once Brewed, visit housesteads, spend a day walking on the wall, visit Vindolanda and that sort of thing, and just stay there. There's also a bus that runs along this road, and the bus schedule's in the book. And so you can pick up a bus and go down here and visit the wall for a while, and then take the bus back to your B&B or whatever you want to do. But we enjoyed the break at the Core Bridge. So I started to talk a little about options to hiking. Staying at Once Brood or somewhere here, visiting Housesteads, visiting Vindolanda would be an idea. Staying down here in Core Bridge and getting a ride up just to walk a bit of the wall for the day. Then all you got to do is get back down on the highway, find the bus, and get the bus back to wherever you're staying. So you could really enjoy yourself along here, just doing a few day hikes along the wall and really getting a feel for what it's like. And this center portion is probably the best place to go. It's the most beautiful scenery. So if you didn't want to hike the whole thing, there's those good options. Just kind of a breakdown of what the cost was. I didn't think round trip 800 was too bad to London, and B&Bs a little bit. We really didn't have to buy much lunch. There were a couple places where we had the B&B make lunch for us, but the English are good at a lot of things, but making a sandwich, they're not very good at. It's kind of 2 pieces of bread and something in the middle, and you have this huge breakfast. You have an English breakfast at the B&B, and then you go out that night to some restaurant. So you really don't need a lot of lunch. But anyway, a little miscellaneous, whatever that might be. You picking up something maybe at a gift shop or something like that. And then we stayed in that L small room at Gatwick overnight, waiting for our flight out. So it's not that bad for what you're doing. So we talked about which way, we talked about transportation, B&B versus camp. These are the questions I really think you need to think about, and be honest with yourself about what you can do, what you can handle, and what the best way to go as you plan your trip. And there's nothing wrong with getting somebody to plan your trip for you. There's nothing wrong with getting a baggage service. That if you're going to be staying in B&Bs, that baggage service is a must. And then just be prepared for some rainy, windy weather, even though we didn't have any. And then, look at some side trips and that sort of thing. So let's take a look at hiking the wall path. You're going to go up and down and through a lot because you're going from one person's property to another, and they all are marked usually with stone fences. So we went up and down several times a day over the fence. And all of them were different. There's kind of an old-fashioned sign. There's a different one. You see, there's the acorn sign showing you the trail. It's not too hard to figure out there. You can see where it goes.
Some of those are pretty steep to get over too. They're not easy to crawl over.
That's right, especially for us short folks. And then in the middle where we said it was hilly, there's some pretty steep parts. So I use hiking sticks. I don't think you brought any, did you, Christy?
No, I didn't.
You used them or not. But on some of these steep parts, the hiking sticks are great for going down, holding myself going down and helping go up. Beautiful, isn't it? Makes you want to go over there and hike it.
The middle was very steep, like just walking up and down steep stairs all day for a couple of those middle days. So we were not expecting that.
A little bit about B&Bs. This was our B&B the first night. And like Christy said, every night in the room is your china and your tea set. So you can sit down and make yourself some tea every night. And that's kind of nice. That's better than in a tent, slurping up some water. You have nice roomy areas like this. I believe this was at Downton Abbey.
We kept comparing it to the Appalachian Trail, saying this is not the Appalachian Trail.
Right. Yeah. We're used to hiking the Appalachian Trail or something together. This was the one, this was in Brampton, the Oakwood Park Hotel in Brampton. This is where we had to get we came off the trail and called a ride service to take us here. We call it Downton Abbey. It's a little mini Downton Abbey, but it was really a nice place. And this is a typical breakfast, huh? So you can see you probably don't need a lot of lunch. And I like this sign. Remember the sign as you pack your clothes. Lots of animals, but none of them too dangerous. Curious, like them. Loving, like these two, and this horse here. But just domestic animals. And you're going through farm fields and walking through herds of
It's a
animals
little
all the time.
startling because you have to walk right past like tons of cow and tons of sheep, like right next to them, inches from them sometimes.
Well, we were a little worried too. Some of them had babies, but they weren't worried about us.
All very sweet. Never been that close to animals like that before.
We talked a little bit about Newcastle. It's a neat town, and worth going up maybe a day early. There's a museum in Newcastle we didn't get to see, and the nightlife was jaw-dropping. And so, if you're into
Wild, very wild.
Yeah, Newcastle. We asked some people about Newcastle. I'd never know this. They just nodded their heads and said, "Oh yeah, Newcastle."
The outfits and the drunken stumbling.
The outfits that the women wear were something to behold. This is the Corbridge town. We took the break off the trail and went down to look at the Corbridge Roman ruins. And then right on the trail, we saw some pictures of this before, was Housesteads. And that's a Roman fort right there on the trail. That's fun to visit. In Carlisle, that's on the west side. Beautiful castle there, neat little walled town. Mary Queen of Scots was imprisoned here. So that castle's got that going for it. So that was pretty neat. And there were some pretty old churches there in Carlisle too. Carlisle was really a neat city. And we have lots of beautiful views along the way. This is hiking along the wall up to Housestead. So this is kind of how the wall expanded into a large fort there at Housesteads. But you can't beat a view like that, huh? When the Romans built the wall, they had a team that went ahead of everybody else and built the foundation. And so they built a foundation for a 4-meter thick wall, and then decided early on to only do 3 meters, but they forgot to tell the foundation guys. So they built a foundation of 4 meters all the way across. And so you had this extra meter gap here where there wasn't anything built, so they went back to 3 meters. This was sort of on the western side of that hilly area. I think there was a quarry here. A lot of the stone that the Romans got for building the wall came from this area. So this is west of Housesteads. There are some places where there's some woods, huh, Chrissy, but not too much. Starting out the first day, we walked through woods quite a bit, and I don't remember a whole lot of woods other than that. Mostly we were out in the open. And we had a great time. Now this is our first sighting of the wall on our first day. Finally, we ran into some wall. So that was our first day.